Strap into your seats and get ready. It's time for the Mortarpod.
Hey, it's Alex from SeemsGoodMagic.com. Welcome to this week's episode of the Mortarpod. Jake and I jump right into our standard decks and results from this week's F&M. I wanted to first talk about VarenCamp.com with you guys. Scott Varencamp designed SeemsGoodMagic.com. He did a great job, so I'd like to point you in his direction if you need any web design work, and that's at www.VEHRENKAMP.com, Varencamp. Also, visit SeemsGoodMagic.com. If you are just listening to this podcast for the first time, don't know anything about us, I'm Alex Stephenson, and Jake Faas always joins me every week on the podcast, and you can go to our website, SeemsGoodMagic.com, where we post all sorts of content. We're already, deep into Theros drafts and some of the standard lists. Tristan Peterson is a friend of mine from my meta, and he's started recording some standard constructed stuff. So check out Tristan draft videos if you are also a longtime, watcher of Seems Good Magic and are in the mood for something different. It's cool to see him putting up some nice constructed lists, and he's playing black-white mid-range right now, so you get a good idea of how that deck is faring in the meta. Okay, we go over a couple of the top 8 lists from the last couple weeks of standard constructed, and we examine those decks, and as well as our matchups and what our meta is like. So just jump right into it. I hope you enjoy this week, and I'll talk to you later. All right, welcome to this week's episode of the Mortarpod. Jake and I are going to go through our F&M decks, and we both made top 8 this week, so we did good. And this is going to be really cool because he played control and I played aggro, so you get to see how both decks fared in the meta, although we do have a fairly narrow meta, it seems like. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It seems like a lot of junk, a lot of black-white, a lot of black-white-red.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of combinations of black and white, it seems like.
Pretty much, yeah.
People love that Obsidian.
For good reason, though.
People love the new Elspeth.
Yeah, the Obsidian whip combination is just really good. So.
Desecration Demons, very popular.
Yeah.
And then, of course, green-white, also popular, with the Voice of Resurgence and the Loxodon Smiters, and just all sorts of terribly efficient creatures. Advent of the Worm, very popular spell.
It is, yeah. Also very good.
Yeah, very good now, especially. It seems like it didn't see as much play in...
Not initially. I think
it's
Restoration Angel was the better flash creature at 4, so...
Wanted the evasion.
Yeah. I mean, it's still evasive, but the fact that it's also a token is somewhat beneficial, because it can't be countered by, like, Essence Scatter, I guess, but there's some other reason that it's a pain in the ass that it's a token sometimes, but I can't think of it right now. Anyway.
Well, we're going to run through what we played, because Jake did Esper Control, and I did a Boros aggro, pretty much a mono-red, but the white in it was for Chain to the Rocks, and Boros Charm and War Leader's Helix out of sideboard. So Jake will run through his matches, and actually maybe just go through his list a little bit, and I can show key cards if you want. Maybe the blue-black Planeswalker?
Yeah, Ashiok is really, really good, I think. Might be just particularly for our meta, but I was really happy with this card. It was really good in particular against junk because you can take a Voice or a Loxodon Smiter for very little. Taking their Obsidian, just getting it out of their library is good enough. Not necessarily to play it yourself, but just to get rid of it for them, or from take it from them permanently, is a really good aspect of this card against junk. I had 2 Ashiok, 2 Elspeth, 4 Jace, 4 Detention Sphere, 4 Azorius Charm, 3 Sphinx's Revelation, 2 Doomblade, 2 Heroes Downfall, 4 Supreme Verdict. I'm trying to think of some other stuff that I run. Well, I don't know. Those are like the real main parts of that deck.
Is there any
I
counter
run
spell
counter
main deck?
spells, yeah. So I run 2 Syncopates, 2 Dissolves, and an Essence Scatter main deck.
Okay. That's a pretty good amount. How many Sphinx's Revelation did you say again?
3.
Okay.
If I were going to make changes to the deck for our meta, one of the things I want is another Ashiok, so going up to 3 Ashiok. Probably adding Obsidian to the deck as well, and adding another Hero's Downfall and taking the Doomblades out, I think, and also taking out the one Detention Sphere. The problem with the deck is that if they get that Obsidian whip thing going, I can't do anything about that normally with only my 2 Heroes Downfall, and they have to attack with it in order for me to get the Azorius Charm off on it.
Far and away. Far works.
Oh, I do have 2 far and away, yeah. So that does work. But generally speaking, it was really difficult to take care of it with only 4 answers or so in the deck total to Obsidian. So I want to increase my chance against playing against an Obsidian. So I'm going to probably up some instant speed removal in the deck.
Yeah, and you can get some enchantment or artifact removal to take care of the whip, which is kind of nice.
Well, Detention Sphere works fine for it.
It's just Abrupt Decay is the only issue with Detention Sphere, really.
Yeah.
And actually, people are packing some enchantment removal now, because, which kind of bodes a little bit worse for both Chain of the Rocks on my end and Detention Sphere on your end.
I would actually rather just play a Null out of the sideboard now, because Blue Devotion is a deck too. You can counter Biden and Thassa's out of that deck. You can counter Whip with it. You can counter Detention Spheres against control with it. I'd probably play 1 or 2 Annuls in the sideboard, and then, keep 2 Negates in the sideboard as well. And that will help to take care of Whip as well, but give me a little more flexibility on enchantment creatures like the gods. Even taking out Nilia for the mono green deck is fine too. Or Boon Satyr, for that matter.
Yeah, totally. Do you remember some of your matches?
Yeah, my round 1 opponent was green-red monsters, and then I played 2 junk decks in a row. I think that's how it went down. I can't remember exactly. And then my last round opponent was mono blue devotion. I think that is how it went.
Okay.
And I had a little bit more trouble with mono blue devotion than I thought I was going to. So that would be where I would need to bring in possibly like different removal out of the sideboard. Maybe have Doomblades in the sideboard still so I can go against that deck a little easier. But Last Breath, I think, is fine for their Master of the Waves.
Yeah.
Even playing Gainsay out of the sideboard wouldn't be a bad idea either, just to answer everything in their deck. I would only play Gainsay, though, if Mono Blue Devotion was really popular, As it stands right now, there aren't a lot of people in our meta that play it, so...
Yeah, V is playing blue-black, but it's a lot of the same stuff. Actually, I think it's Esper, No, I think it actually is just blue-black.
It's a blue...
You did last
there
week,
is, like, a blue-black version I've seen.
With Desecration Demons and stuff still, but they are also running counter spells and a lot of good removal, like Hero's Downfall. So that's an interesting deck, too. I actually think it was more splash blue, and it's more like mono black.
Yeah.
But the blue gives you access to some really good counter spells. So
yeah, it does. I really like counter spells right now. I kind of want to go up more on counter spells because they do so much against everyone. But
do you feel like you've gotten a good grasp of Dissolve yet, and how it fits and how it feels in the meta and how you think its future is going to be?
It's fine. It's a fine card. I mean, it's not the end-all be-all counter spell, but at least it's better than Cancel. You get some benefit from it.
Could you see it being played in another block, or are we going to see it probably seeing less play than it does now?
If they come out with a different uncommon counterspell that's better than this, or different in some way, that'll take over where this is. Because this doesn't give you
enough.
Yeah. If this was Scry 2, it would be really good, and still right at that cost, in my opinion. Magma Spray or Magma Jet is, you get to scry 2 off that, and it just costs 1 more than a shock would, but...
They were definitely cautious with this card because it's already an upgrade from both Cancel and, like, I'd even say Stoic Rebuttal, you know what I mean?
I would have actually accepted this card at 4 with Scry 2. Then it would be comparable to Dismiss.
Do you really think the extra Scry is that much more important to this card's...
I think to a control strategy, Scrying 2 is way better than Scrying 1.
And that's definitely the cards being played.
Mm.
The decks that would play Dissolve, although your mono blue opponent was also playing Dissolve, at least out of the sideboard, right?
I'm sure, yeah.
So, yeah, I think I watched him dissolve something important he played, perhaps an Azorius Charm or something. But you still got Syncopate. How's that playing? Or are you
I like
not doing...
Syncopate. It's pretty good. Syncopate is good.
Yeah, Syncopate from Return to Ravnica, of course, and was actually played in Constructed ever since it first came out. And it's essentially the power sync that exiles, right? So,
yeah.
And what was it originally printed in?
Odyssey.
Okay,
Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
At Common as well.
That's true. They upped the rarity of it. That's pretty interesting.
I like that they kind of did the same art, only upgraded it hard.
Yeah, so Syncopate, is essentially power synced. You just X blue, and then you get to exile it, which is currently relevant. Maybe not so much, but a little bit.
It's a little relevant. It's relevant when you Syncopate an Obsidian.
True. Yeah, especially against that whip deck, where they can feed off of it from the graveyard.
Yeah, but that is one of the reasons I want to have Dark Betrayal on my sideboard against Obsidian in particular.
So you lost against Junk in top 8.
Yeah.
And I think Jake and I are both going to have to... you really have to make adjustments to what your meta is. So in our case, our meta is very black. There's a lot of black decks. A lot of people playing Desecration Demon. A lot of people playing Obsidian. Powerful black removal. Hero's Downfall. People are loving that. I feel like there's a lot of Elspeth.
Yeah.
So I think Jake's got some really good answers in Dark Betrayal, I think, which you mentioned, which is, of course, the new 1 mana destroy target black creature.
Yeah, it just does so much for 1 black, and the
Obsidian for 1 is just, I think, just essential, absolutely essential.
Yeah, because you can leave up just 1 black mana. They assume you can't do anything, and they'll bring it back with Whip, and then you Dark Betrayal it, and it's like, oh, well.
And even on a Desecration Demon, are you going to be that upset?
No, I would happily do it to a Desecration Demon, too.
So, and I'm trying to think if there's any other ones. Blood Baron's also played, and you can't hit it. Yep. So, like, Blood Baron is actually something that's making, it's more in the what is it, Borzov, I guess, deck, the black, white, red. We have a couple of those floating around, and Blood Baron in that, along with Obsidian. It's like all of the, and Stormbreath Dragon. You started to get some silly 5-drops in there, and they're all super value. So, and they're, ramping with like Rakdos Keyrune or something, which is still a good creature. So there's some powerful threats, but there does seem to be some consistency. People are all about Obsidian or meta and Desecration Demon and stuff like that. So really gearing your decks towards those, I think, is going to be essential, at least having the right options out of sideboard if you don't want to main deck it. Because there is still a fair amount of green-white.
Yeah. And Gainsay is good, but I feel like Last Breath actually takes out everything that I want to take out with the Gainsay, as far as basically Voice of Resurgence,
Last Breath definitely went under the radar for me. Certainly important in taking out Voice of Resurgence, like you say, and dealing with some other threats early. If you're playing Control, them gaining 4 doesn't really matter at all.
No, not at all.
Even taking out like a Rakdos Cackler when you don't want to be getting pounded for another 2 to 4 damage or whatever.
It's great against an aggro deck too. It removes Ash Zealot, Chandra's Phoenix.
Chandra's Phoenix is a super relevant one that does it too, since they can't get it back. And same with Voice. Okay. So any other changes you think besides the Doomblade swap that you think you're going to make?
I don't know. I'll have to look at my list again. I know that I'm running the 4 of Azorius Charm, and I might go down to 3 on that.
I see.
And try and see, just to spread out and diversify my removal. I really do want another counter spell, just one more maybe in my deck.
How many syncopates were you running? 2?
Just 2.
I guess that's a good number
and
for
then
them.
an Essence Scatter and 2 Dissolve.
Like maybe 2 Essence Scatter?
I could
justify
do 2.
that.
Yeah,
I think Essence Scatter is very good,
I
actually.
do too.
There's some super relevant threats that you want to hit with that.
Mm.
I was just saying how many good. I mean, I can jump into what I played. So the Boros red deck wins almost deck I'm playing. I can pretty much show you what's different than what I had and posted in my blog because it's pretty close to this deck. So it's 4 Fire Drinker Satyr, 4 Cackler, 4 Burning Tree Emissary, 4 Fire Fist Striker, 4 Chandra's Phoenix, 4 Gorehouse Chainwalker, 2 Goblin Shortcutter. In this list I was running Magma Jets, but now I have Lightning Strike, Shock, and Chain to the Rocks. And then the only difference with the land base is 10 mountains. I'm going to have 4 Temple of Triumph, but this red I only ran 3 Temple of Triumph and 1 Boros Guild Gate, and then the 4 Sacred Foundry, and 4 Mutavault. Mutavaults are actually absolutely essential to this deck. Sideboard is definitely different than this. I am doing the 4 Skullcracks, and I did do 3 Active Treason, but I've got 3 Boros Charms out of side. I believe 2 War Leaders Helix, and 2 Mizzium Mortars, which are... I'm thinking about going up to 4 Mizzium Mortars. I do think that card is also essential to this deck. So where this deck shines is in most matches. I mean, it's super explosive, and I like the explosiveness of it. I don't think it quite, reaches the capacity that I thought Naya Human Blitz did. I really felt like that deck synergized well enough where you really dished out damage consistently with it.
Mm-hmm.
This still dishes out damage consistently, but I just think it's not quite as quick. I do like the removal a lot in this list. Master of Waves was a big deal, and actually I did play mono blue as well, and I ended up getting hosed by back-to-back Master of Waves.
Yeah.
Just couldn't deal with. I had actually used, I'm main decking 4 Chain to the Rock, so I should have been able to deal with it, but I had used it the turn previous on a Thassa, and it ended up costing me bad when he played the Master of Waves. So I think actually the Chain to the Rocks are just essential. There's, like I said, there's so many threats, not only in our meta, but just in general and standard right now that are strong against this deck, like Boros Reckoner and the Desecration Demons. Even though I guess you could sack a creature and tap that down to still get in. But locks it on Smiter. Voice of Resurgence is still a big deal.
Yeah.
Unflinching Courage is an enormous deal. So I guess Fleecemane Lion's another card we should probably mention, since it's a Watch Wolf with a monstrosity ability that, coupled with Unflinching Courage, is against us almost unbeatable. For that reason, I gotta add Wear and Tear to my sideboard, which is also valuable because once again we need to deal with the Whip of Erebus, because the Whip of Erebus Obsidian combo is of course good against us too. I guess I'm making it out like we're fighting an uphill battle, but this deck still does a very high amount of pressure. I mean, I almost always have the 1-drop 2-power guy, which is essential. I either Burning Tree into a Fire Fist Striker or get a Mutavault and a second creature. So I almost always have 3 creatures on turn 2, which is also extremely important for if you want to dish out enough damage early to be able to burn them out later. So Goblin Shortcutter is something I was fairly happy with. It paid off once or twice as just getting by an important blocker, especially with the Fire Fist Striker. You get to do some really cool stuff with that. I got to Skullcrack a green-white player, not for the win, unfortunately. It got him to 1 life, but I Skullcracked him when he cracked in with an Unflinching Courage Smiter plus a Fiendslayer Paladin, so it was prevented him from gaining 8 life and did 3 damage to him. So
it's almost like doing 11 damage.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, I wish it was 12 damage, since that would have killed him. But it did come down to a top deck, and that was in top 8. Green-white, obviously, your worst match, since they have just those over-the-top life gain plays. But once again, Chain of the Rocks played extremely well. I think if you want to play red deck wins, I really urge you to probably go the more Boros direction. You might think that running the 4 coming to play tap lands would hurt it, but I was actually really happy with the Temples. I don't know how Temples perform for you, but
I really like them, yeah.
I would imagine them actually being extremely good for control. But even as an aggro player, I got to say, I wasn't horribly upset with Temple of Triumph. A lot of times it did not disrupt my turn progression, and I was happy to have the white mana. and the scry was relevant. So those lands have proven to be pretty good, I would think. I think they're going to be played for a while.
I think so too.
In some capacity, a 1 or 2 of something like that. Mutavault, once again, just absolutely essential to this deck. I really love how it plays alongside the Fire Fist Striker. Just getting that extra damage done early and after a Supreme Verdict, which I didn't play against yesterday, but if I had, I would be happy to have the Mutavaults, especially when there's a couple out. Have you run into that problem at all, where it's like, okay, I have the Verdict because I have to take care of these 3 creatures on board, but he's got 2 Mutavaults, which means I'm getting hit for 4 at least next turn. So sometimes stuff like that is, those Mutavaults just pay off enough where that's what wins you the game. Chandra's Phoenix played really well. I was happy with that card in general. I think I returned it maybe once or twice yesterday, but it's nice to have the hastiness. I'm not doing Ash Zealot, which is sort of questionable, I guess. And I could see myself running that over the Short Cutter, since it still works very well alongside Shock and Lightning Strike for dealing with fatties. The Advent of the Worm is a big deal against this deck, since Fire Fist Striker, can't target it, and then after battalions they can flash it in and block it. So that's, there's
pretty big blowout.
It is. There's a lot of good cards against me in green-white, absolutely no doubt. Fleecebane Lion just is a game breaker, real bad, and he must be dealt with. But once again, I think for our meta, I'm gonna up the Mizium Mortars count. I like having more outs to Stormbreath Dragon. I like having more outs for Blood Baron and Vizkopa. I guess it doesn't deal with Obsidian, but I'm never gonna have time to. I don't really have stuff that deals with Obsidian anyway. I guess I could double burn it, like Lightning Strike, Shock it.
Yeah, that sucks. It always sucks too.
I would 2-for-1 myself to take care of an Obsidian, though. That's pretty essential. I think most of those decks that are running it are probably doing it 2-up max. I can't see going like 2 Hog Wild running like 4 Obsidian. Seems a little bit over the top.
Yeah, I think so too.
3's a possibility, but you got to be like heavy in on the Obsidian plan. Because I actually think those whip decks, at least in our meta, are pretty diverse when it comes to what they're running. Burning Tree Emissary, this deck really couldn't function without Burning Tree Emissary. It's just as relevant now as it was in the last standard. I totally underrated this card when it was first spoiled. But yeah, in multiples alongside one of your many other 2-in-1 drops, it just can really take over the game. I ended up also losing in top 8. It was green-white, but the Soldier of the Pantheon is very good against this deck because we have Cackler, we have Burning Tree, and even though I guess that's it for the multicolor, just having that 2-1 Pro multicolor can leave it back and always block the Cackler. It's
block and kill either one of those.
Or the Emissary. Those are just important creatures in the deck, so having a 1-drop that gains life off of them and can block them indefinitely is proven to be really good. I'm trying to think. I never had to side in the Boros Charms. Originally I was main decking them the previous Friday, but in our meta they just weren't that relevant. I think if control gets huge, I really am going to want to just pack probably 4 Boros Charm main deck. But I would say in the meta that I'm at, if you have a lot of black in your meta, you really need to consider Chain of the Rocks. You need to have good outs for big creatures, and I think you could probably outrace the rest. And you can always bring in more burn out of sideboard. I'm not doing Burning Earth out of sideboard right now. I'm really thinking maybe after the next set, when we get more of the Scry lands coming out, maybe we're going to see more mana bases. Your mana base, I guess, was probably pretty non-basic heavy, right?
Yeah. It is very non-basic heavy.
How many would you say?
I think I have 8 basics in the deck.
Okay.
So,
and you probably presumably run at 25, 26 lands?
Yeah.
One or the other?
Something like that.
So, you're looking at
It's probably 26.
So, yeah, maybe Burning Earth is an option I need to be considering. It's not like a junk mana base is not non-basic heavy. You know what I mean? It's super non-basic. Yeah. I would say junk is super... Even the black-white decks have access to the Scry lands and the... Shock lands.
Even any dual color deck is running like the guild gates pretty much.
I could re-examine, maybe bring in a couple Burning Earths out of the sideboard. So
it's definitely good against junk and control,
which we do have a lot of. So maybe that is another thing I need to be looking at. Active Treason doesn't play or didn't play as well as I would like to against green-white. You'd rather just have the Skull Crack because if they get the Unflinching Courage, it doesn't really matter if you steal their guy. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So not as good against that. Against the green-red mid-range deck that we both played, definitely serves well against that because he's got the Amber Swallowers and the Polycranos and stuff.
Yeah, just one big fatty at a time.
Yep.
So that one is definitely worth it there.
So yeah, round one I played against, I can just go through my list real quick, Blue-Black Mill, and it was a younger kid, so that was a pretty easy match for the deck. It just, obviously went too fast. Round two, I played against the Mono Blue Devotion, and that was where I had the problem with Master of Waves game one. Game two was really, a close match, but I ended up sealing the deal with a top deck, Lightning Strike. It was almost necessary, but I'd scried pretty much my way down to it with a couple Temple of Triumphs, which was nice. And actually, he had hit me with a couple Night Veil Specters that game too. And actually, maybe it was a dick comment that I made, but I was like, what I said was like, it's weird that if you hadn't attacked the Night Veil Spectre, I wouldn't have been able to win that game. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like it really, really boiled down to an attack with the Night Veil Spectre.
It milled you that one.
It moved me the one spot necessary to get to that Lightning Strike. And there was obviously no way for either of us to know that.
That's the problem with milling, actually, in general, too, is like,
sometimes
if you just mill them and get them closer to answers for what you got.
Or, obviously you want to hit the answers, but in this case, it literally moved me into the answer that killed him. But then he got me back game three with the same plan. He hit me with Night Veil Spectre, took one of my Sacred Foundries, and then hit me with that same Night Veil Spectre later, and took a Mizium Mortars, and then he actually was able to kill my Chandra's Phoenix that was going to block one of his two Night Veil Specters. I was at 4 life. So he played my own Mizium Mortars to beat me, essentially. So that was rough, but so I lost that round. Round three, I played against a junk deck, and he just had too many Thought Seizes and Read the Bones. So he had quite a bit main deck. I think he was more geared for the mid-range and control because he had stuff that hurt himself but gave himself good information and card advantage, and it proved to be horrible against me.
Right.
He had a lot of spot removal too, which is good against me, but his problem was it was too much 2 and 3 mana removal. So like all it took was a 1-drop plus a Burning Tree creature and a Mutavault. It was like having the 3 or 4 threats on turn 2 and 3 and 4 were enough to deal damage where I beat him with Lightning Strike and Shock. And his only real sideboard answers were just bringing in more cheap spot removal, but it just wasn't enough. So that is like definitely an important thing that you need for the aggro decks. You need to be able to race spot removal because there's a lot of good cheap spot removal right now. The only thing that really beats hard aggro, creature aggro is the Supreme Verdicts and the other board wipes, like maybe Gaze of Granite or something, but even that's a little bit expensive.
Yeah. But it can do stuff against tokens.
For 5 mana, it deals with most of the stack. Almost the vast majority of the stack is dealt with a 5 mana Gaze of Granite. So, but that extra mana can prove lethal when it comes to red deck wins. Really crunches numbers hard. So it's a good deck. I like it. It's what I feel comfortable playing. There's really good creatures in the format now, so you have to be a patient player because I can see this deck losing a lot, but definitely you can take games over, especially even in matches where you think it's unfavorable. Burning Tree and the 1-drop suit really can take it over. Pros of Fire Drinker Satyr, if I haven't already said it, it's really nice to be able to attack into Sylvan Caryatid and threaten to pump so they don't want to block. As long as you're dealing any damage with Fire Drinker Satyr, you should be feeling good. I definitely take him out in the green-white match just because his creatures are so big that I don't like the idea of trying to race them with the 1-drops. For that, you really need to just focus on your evasion and your removal and just make sure that you're hitting the right cards at the right time. And Chain of the Rocks, once again, just absolutely an essential part of this deck. Would not be able to, I don't feel comfortable enough with the red deck wins plan where I think you're gonna be able to do it in most metas, because I do feel like a lot of metas are probably playing the green-white deck. We ran through those tools. They're very good. They have Rootborn defenses too, so they have their own little Supreme Verdict protection, because obviously the worst green-white matchup is the hard control. So having that Rootborn is really nice. And actually, they have that other one from Dragon's Maze too. Technically, that one, and it's a fuse card, and it's
yeah. Ready and willing.
Mm-hmm. So they have 2 cards. I mean, they're gonna play the Rootborn because they're running Advent to the Worm, but I mean, some of them are running the Call of the Conclave too, and so I mean, green white's definitely solid. I would probably play it, but I really don't like having a bad control match. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that one in particular, I feel like your aggro match is so stacked in your favor, but I really do feel like your control match, and even the mono blue match, I could see being
kind of a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
Mhm.
Maybe.
Well, mostly because they can play Tidebinder for effect almost all the time.
Mm-hmm. And they have the Jace.
They have Frostburn Weird that stops your 3/3s.
And Frostburn Weird's great against this list too, by the way. Frostburn Weird does seem to be just really good in the meta right now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's even a way to get your Perforos on if you wanted to make something weirdo like that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's definitely better with a token deck, but that's actually just a weird god in general because the tokens...
He wants you to play tokens.
But the tokens don't give you devotion.
Yeah.
So that's kind of... Yeah, I guess that is kind of strange.
He does have token production Anvil, though. Or not Anvil, but Hammer.
That's true. And those two interact well. It doesn't seem like either of those are seeing much play anymore, though.
No.
But I guess I haven't looked. We can just briefly look. Why don't we just quickly look at the last weekend, what the top maybe 4 or 8 decks were. So it does look like a blue-white control list. One today, Aetherling, 4 Jace, 4 Detention Sphere, 4 Azorius Charm, 2 Celestial Flare, 3 Dissolve, 2 Essence Scatter, a Quicken, 4 Sphinx's Revelation, 2 Syncopate, 3 Divination, 4 Supreme Verdict. I like the Quicken with 3 Divination. That makes a lot more sense. You're not doing Divinations in this deck, though, are you?
No, but I've got a lot more spot removal, though.
Okay.
See, and this deck is kind of weak against the Whip plan, too, if they get it out. But he's running 3 Dissolve and 2 Essence Scatter and 2 Syncopate. So there's more counter spells in this one.
And it looks like a black-white mid-range list took second. So this is sort of what we'd expect to see a little bit around our meta. And this is the Banisher Priest, Desecration Demon, Precinct Captain, Soldier of the Pantheon. Actually, I really urge you all to watch Tristan Peterson. He just posted a, what was it? Well, it was like a standard event on SeemsGoodMagic. So he's actually playing a deck that's almost identical to this. Obviously, some main deck differences, but very close to this. And he's having some success with it. So if you are a fan of lists like this, it's a lot of main deck spot removal and card advantage too. Read the Bones, Thought Seizes, Hero's Downfall, Doomblades. It's a lot of spot removal plus the ultimate price. And then it's got the Whip with the Obsidian. So this is actually a deck that's running with 3 Obsidian. This looks like a pretty high value deck. I mean, not the Doomblade, the Hero's Downfall, the ultimate price plus the Banisher Priest. It's like almost a deck just chock full of removal. And it's got the one of Elspeth too to really top it off. So this is a cool deck. This looks like fun. Pretty good value there.
Yeah.
Took third. We've got a green-red Devotion deck. So this looks like a red-green sort of stompy deck. Arbor Colossus, Burning Tree, Mystics, Mistcutter Hydras, one of main deck. 3 Scavenging Ooze, some Caryatids, Voyaging Satyrs, Polychronos. Definitely doing stuff on turn 3.
Yeah.
Turn 3 is the integral turn in this deck. It's the one where you lay down the fatties, the fatty mid-range guys. I guess it does have some stuff it can do early too with the Burning Tree, so that's good. It's also running Domries, 4 of Garruk, which is a little bit surprising, and then 2 of Xenagos. I mean, you got to appreciate that there's 2 red-green Planeswalkers in the format now. Have you had to go? Yeah, you actually went head-to-head against both of these already, and decks like Jake's are just so well geared to deal with that with the Detention Spheres right now. I mean, I guess if you were expecting to see more of these, you probably wouldn't be taking away any Detention Spheres.
But too is in standard, so.
Oh, that's true. So actually, just Planeswalkers in general seem like they're a little bit
easier to keep in line as opposed to the way
and we still have Dreadboard too, even though it's not being played. It always is just a step away from. I think the thing is the instant speed on Hero's Downfall is really that important.
Well, when it can take out the Stormbreath Dragon that's swinging in on you this turn, or the Obsidian that's coming back with the Whip before it gets to exile itself.
Good point. So it's just really important creatures that are being played right now really require the Hero's Downfall. And actually, that seemed to always be a shortcoming of the Dreadbore was the sorcery speed. It was still played, but it was finally, I think it was resigned to sideboard for like junk.
Yeah.
Nick Jones with another Esper Control, so this is probably a little bit similar to what Jake is playing. You weren't main decking Thoughtseize, were you? Or
No.
okay.
And in fact, I don't really like Thoughtseize that much in the main deck still, but, you know, I can see its usefulness. I wish that I had more ways beyond Sphinx's Revelation to gain life. So he's playing Obsidian, so he can justify it a little more than I can.
He's also got the Sphinx's Revelation, which you had too, but
I just feel like it's not enough life gain
to justify the main deck Thoughtseize.
Yeah, because you want to use it to stem or like stop the bleeding from what your opponent is doing to you usually. But if you're in a like mid-range or control-heavy meta, it's fine. Thoughtseize is actually really good in the main deck.
I've got a black green, so I got a little rock mid-range deck here. Oh, this is the Gray Merchant deck, so that's kind of cool. Yeah, I had heard Gray Merchant had made constructed, and there might be a couple other decks that have it too, but let's talk about the Gray Merchant deck real quick. We've got 4 Gray Merchant of Asphodel, which if you don't remember, it's 5 mana, 2/4. When enters, each opponent loses X life, and you gain X life, where X is your devotion to black. Definitely a stacked limited card, but
see, this is totally where I can see the 4 Thoughtseize also. This makes sense to me as a
make sure that you can get your, well, you're not only gaining life, but you want to make sure you stop those Supreme Verdicts so you get maximum value off those devotions. It's also doing Lifebane Zombies of 4 of, which I do think is actually a wise plan since it takes out Obsidian, it takes out Smiter. Oh wait, no, I guess they would. No, it exiles it, so it even takes out the Smiter, bypasses that ability. Voice, but they probably would have played it already.
But it gets their second voice if you're on the play and they played one on turn 2.
It should be known, or at least addressed, that this doesn't hit Advent of the Worm, which is more merit to Advent of the Worm, I would say.
Ultimate Price does, and Abrupt Decay does.
Yeah, so they have answers for it still. But we should also mention that Advent of the Worm's interesting because it's like the negates hit it instead of the Essence Scatters.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's sort of a weird, unique aspect of it. But I mean, Ratchet Bomb also hits it, and that's in Standard. So if that becomes a good tool to use, if tokens get powerful, we've got it in Standard. This deck looks really interesting. A couple of Reaper of the Wilds, 3 Night Veil Specters, Underworld Connections main deck, Abrupt Decay, Hero's Downfall, Ultimate Price, Whip of Erebus. The Whip is insane with the Gray Merchants.
Yeah.
I like to see the Reaper. That's kind of cool.
I'm surprised that Ultimate Price is main deck.
I guess he was expecting a lot of Desecration Demons. He's probably expecting what are some other good monocolor? I mean, it's very good against very good against Stormbreath, very good against the mono red aggro. I mean, you're hitting a lot of relevant stuff there. What else is it probably good against? I guess green-white does have a lot of multicolored creatures, so it's probably not great against that. I mean, you can hit Aetherling, but Aetherling never really gets hit. Jeez.
I know. When I think of good monocolored creatures, I only think of Desecration Demon and
Well,
Stormbreath.
actually, it's good in the mirror match since it hits your Lifebane Zombie and your Desecration Demon still. So there are some, the fact that it hits black creatures is actually relevant. It is interesting that he opted to do Ultimate Price over the Doomblades then. So it must have been, I would say, a meta call would be his thoughts on that. Sideboard, we see some Haunted Plate Mail, which is quite interesting.
I think that's cool.
So it's probably for the
like Haunted Plate Mail.
Control decks of some sort, I'm assuming.
It's like a Mutavault.
A lot of one-ups. Sideboard.
Skylash is cool too.
Didn't seem like too much green main deck. See Abrupt Decay, and that's about it.
I guess Ultimate Price works really well against Mono Blue Devotion.
Reaper, I'm sorry, say it again.
Ultimate Price is good against Mono Blue Devotion.
Oh yeah, good call. So if that deck, he predicted the Finkel. I'm pretty sure Finkel was playing that deck. Was going to be catching on. Black-white mid-range is probably just like the other one. Oh, I see a couple different things here. High Priesthood Penance, that's pretty interesting. Still doing Gray Merchants, so this is more like the last deck we looked at.
I like
And
this version of it better.
This has an Erebus out of side, which I do think is cool. The reason I like it, when you've got the Gray Merchants, Gaining Life is relevant, but it's also kind of cool. Stacy in our meta had mentioned it'd be cool to have an Erebus with like an Alms Beast or something.
Yeah.
So that would be kind of funny. But you can still gain life, so it's nice that Erebus specifies it just, hinders your opponent's life gain.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else? Here's the Mono Blue Devotion. Might as well look at it a little bit. This is probably pretty close to what we had played on Friday. Yeah, it's almost identical, actually. Cloudfin Raptors, Judge's Familiar, Frostburn Weirds, Master of Waves, Nightvale Specters, Tidebinder Mage, Thassa. And then a couple of Jaces, 3 Mutavaults, and a Claustrophobia for Devotion, a couple of Cyclonic Rifts.
Why play Disperse at all?
In this deck, I don't know.
Like, why differentiate between Cyclonic Rift and Disperse? Didn't own a third Cyclonic Rift?
Yeah, maybe. I'm not sure. Yeah, I guess I'm not really sure why you would do that. It's also got Dissolve, Biden of Thassa. The other thing that came to mind was like Slaughter Games, but you probably wouldn't name that card anyway.
Right.
It also has a
Nykthos. That's cool.
Yeah. This deck's good. Beat me. Got to deal with that Master of Waves.
Yeah.
So another thing Mono Red can't deal with. So why you need Chain to the Rocks or some sort of other removal. I really think that's all you can do in that sort of strategy, though. I don't know what else Red is doing. Flame Cast Wheel's definitely too slow.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, if they get a second one, it's pretty much that's a really uphill battle. Because having +2/+2 on all those elementals means that even if somehow you were to remove one of the Master of Waves, you'd still have +1/+1 elementals out there.
Yeah, when I was beaten, he had like 10 of them.
So they were like all 4/3.
Yeah, they were huge. So I heard Judge's Familiar from at least the player in our meta. He said it didn't play that well in our meta, which I guess I can see. It doesn't offer
counter everything.
Doesn't counter Supreme Verdict, which is an important one that you want it to counter.
Yeah.
But it does counter spot removal. So I could see it being good against the Hero's Downfall. Makes it pretty clunky at 4 mana. Frostburn Weird, once again, coming up huge in this deck. Not only offering a little Evolve trigger for your Cloudfin Raptor quite often, but also a good beater on its own with all the mana in the world to pump into it. So Frostburn Weird is something to consider. Now I'm kind of pondering it as a 2-drop, but I think I just have my mana too busy.
Yeah, it requires a lot of mana to make it a relevant attacker.
Very good in this deck. Yeah. Very good in this deck. I like it. So this is a cool deck. I don't know how long this will stick around. Seems like something that wants to shift into something a little more control-y or aggro-y.
I think this will be around until the next set comes out.
Some variation of it.
And then we'll see what happens, because I feel like they'll have to go a different direction and possibly everybody will start going at least 2 colors instead of doing just 1 color, but we'll see. The guy that played at our meta was not impressed with Cloudfin Raptor.
Or the Judge's Familiar, really. So that sort of tells you maybe wants it to be more control-y, like maybe more counterspells main deck in our meta especially would work better. So, I mean, a lot of the stuff we're talking about today is meta stuff in general. Like, you really do need to understand where the direction is, where the consistency in your region is with how decks are being played. But we can tell you just what's good and what's bad against, what strategy.
Right.
So I think that's the best we can really offer. But so we'll do our report next week. Do another F&M. And I'm going to stick with pretty much the same deck. I'm assuming you are too, since you had so much fun with that Ashiok.
Yeah, I did have a lot of fun with Ashiok. I would like to play it some more. We'll see. I don't know. I've been thinking of doing like a blue-red burn control, or burn and counter burn. There we go.
Well, I'm going to try and stick with the Boros aggro, see if I can write it out a little bit, learn a little bit more about it, try out those wear and tears. So, all right, that's it for this week. Thanks a lot for stopping out, guys. Follow us on Twitter at SeemsGoodMagic. You can email me, Mortarpod at SeemsGoodMagic.com. I reply to emails most of the time. Watch me live stream on Twitch, and that's Tuesdays, Thursdays, 7 p.m. Central Time. And I've been doing Theros drafts. I've been doing actually better like Theros stream decks than my draft decks I'm putting up on YouTube. I had the mono black gray merchant with a Whip of Erebus, and that deck was insane. I had a green blue deck. I labeled them insane decks because they were insane. I had a Prophet of
Crewfix.
Yep, I had a Prophet of Crewfix. I had 2 Horizon Chimeras, 2 Nemesis of Mortals.
Wow.
There were just a lot of rares in it. There's a bunch that I'm missing too that were in there too, that were just way good. That deck was insane. So I recommend if you want to see some really cool decks from Theros Limited, I would check those out. Otherwise, Tuesdays, Thursdays, 7 p.m. Central Time, come join me. I'd love to talk to you guys. All right, that's it for this week. Thanks for listening, watching, either one.
Yeah.
See you later.
See you later.